One of my favorite recipes, mac and cheese, mac and cheese. One of my favorite recipes. Pretty.
How you guys doing tonight? Awesome. My name is Jeff Siarto, and I'm here to talk to you guys tonight about macaroni and cheese. Before I get started with that, though, I just want to mention that this is my first month back here in Lansing. My wife and I just moved back from after spending about 3 years in Chicago. So we took that reverse brain drain and brought it back to Lansing. We brought our company back here, and I'm excited to be here tonight. So let's learn a bit about macaroni and cheese. Nick, go ahead. Macaroni and cheese is by far America's favorite side dish. Heck, it is their favorite main dish, and all because of one company, one iconic company that we know so well that we don't even have to see their logo to know what they're advertising. All they've got to do is show us their noodle. And this is what they sell. We've all eaten it. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. Probably a lot of you had it before you came out here tonight. But I'm not here to talk about that stuff. I'm here to talk about the real stuff, the real macaroni and cheese, the stuff that we make at home on our own. And before we can really understand what it's like to eat good macaroni and cheese and what it's like to make that for our family, we've got to know where that comes from. What's the origins of macaroni and cheese? And America doesn't have a whole lot to do with it. We can thank our friends the Italians, mostly the southern Italians, who have had macaroni and cheese in their recipe books since the early 13th and 14th centuries. It didn't look a lot like it does now. It was layered noodles with Parmesan cheese in and looked a lot more like lasagna than macaroni and cheese. But this guy, Thomas Jefferson, took a trip to Italy. He ate it, he loved it, and he brought it back to America. And his daughter made a version of this macaroni and cheese he ate in Italy using macaroni and Parmesan cheese right here in the U.S., right here in Monticello. He also brought back a pasta maker from Italy that looks a lot like the pasta makers we have today. It extrudes that dough out through a die, and we cut it off, and we've got macaroni. So he was the guy that we can credit for bringing it here. Fast forward 130 years later, and a little company called Kraft releases the Kraft macaroni and cheese dinner. They released it in the middle of World War II among meat shortages and food rations, and Americans loved it. They bought 1 million boxes the first year, and it became an icon soon thereafter. So how do we get away from that? How do we get back to that pinnacle of pasta perfection? How do we get back to that stuff that Grandma used to make? To get back to that, we need to start in the same place that Mr. Jefferson started, and that's with the noodle. Macaroni is macaroni because it comes from a particular type of wheat, and that wheat is durum flour, or durum wheat, also called semolina. And it's really high in gluten and really low in moisture, and it makes this amazing dried pasta, and that is macaroni. So macaroni comes in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. It actually refers to the dough and not the noodle, so there's all different types of macaroni. So where do we go from here? We've got this awesome macaroni, and we need a sauce. We need a sauce for that macaroni. And the French know how to make sauces. They know how to make 5 sauces really well. They know how to make a béchamel, which comes from milk. They know how to make a hollandaise, which comes from eggs. And they know how to make a tomato sauce, which comes from tomatoes. There's 2 other sauces you may not have heard about. One is called a velouté sauce, and it's made from chicken and light veal stock, and the other is called an Espagnole sauce, and it's made from a dark roux and dark veal stock. So of these 5 mother sauces that they're called, we need to use the béchamel. And to get that béchamel going, we need a roux. And the only way we can get a roux is with 2 things. We need flour and we need butter. And we bring those 2 things together, and we whisk them up in a pan, and they start to look like blonde hair, not like hair, but the color of blonde hair. And when they get to that point, we're going to put some milk in that, and we're going to stir that together until it's thick, and that's a béchamel sauce. And that sauce you can make millions of different things out of. But the best thing you can make out of that sauce is macaroni and cheese. So, to get that macaroni and cheese, we need the cheese. Cheddar is best, in my opinion, although you're free to use whatever you want as long as it is actually real cheese and not some processed amalgamation that looks like cheese. So once this real cheese that comes off a block and a cow mixes with this sauce that also comes from a cow, we get what the French call a Mornay sauce, or a cheese sauce, basically. And this, too, is amazing on things like broccoli and potatoes, but it's even better when you mix it with the macaroni we just talked about. So you bring that macaroni together and you put it in a pan and you bake it in your oven for like 20 minutes and you bring it out, and it's the most amazing thing you've ever had. It puts the blue box to shame. So how do we get back to this? How do we get back to this type of macaroni and cheese? The first thing we need to do is get our butts back in the kitchen and start cooking for ourselves and cooking for our families. Instead of spending time with the microwave and instead of spending time in front of the TV, we need to spend that time in the kitchen cooking with our families. Because when you cook with your family, you eat with your family. And kids that are raised in households where families eat together are less likely to get in trouble with substance abuse, less likely to be obese, less likely to have diabetes, and more likely to just be awesome people in general. So, next time you're thinking about making macaroni and cheese for your family, remember this guy. This guy brought this crazy heavy machine all the way from Italy in the 1790s just so he could serve mac and cheese in the White House. The least we could do is make it at home for ourselves. Because remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is America, and we make macaroni and cheese from scratch. Thank you.